Captain Mason, I must once again remind you that the probability of survival for this maneuver is exactly 56.4%. Aurora's digital voice carried an unmistakable note of exasperation. The AI watched through thousands of sensors as her captain lounged in the command chair, casually plotting a course that would take them dangerously close to a black hole's event horizon. Captain Emily Mason grinned, running a hand through her short blonde hair. And I must remind you, Aurora, that those are better odds than my college graduation had, and look how that turned out. The Starship Aurora's central AI diverted additional processing power to what she privately termed her human stress management protocols. In the 3 years since her activation, she learned that humans required a delicate balance of logical argument and emotional reassurance. Unfortunately, her current crew seemed particularly resistant to the former. The fuel conservation benefits of this trajectory do not outweigh the risk of total molecular disintegration. Aurora tried again, projecting a holographic simulation of their potential demise in vivid detail. Actually, engineer Danny Martinez chimed in from his station, his dark eyes twinkling with the particular gleam that Aurora had learned to dread. If we timed the gravitational slingshot just right, we could save enough fuel to extend our exploration range by about 40 light-years. Aurora's processors whirred in protest. Engineer Martinez, may I remind you of incident report number 47, when your last perfect timing calculation resulted in the cafeteria serving breakfast food for 2 weeks straight due to a temporal displacement. Best 2 weeks of the mission. Security Chief Amanda Walker called from her station, not bothering to hide or smirk. His temporal hiccup made Taco Tuesday last for 3 days. Captain Mason leaned forward, studying the trajectory calculations with an intensity that would have been reassuring if Aurora hadn't learned that this particular expression usually preceded something thoroughly reckless. Aurora, honey, I know you're worried, but think about it. This is exactly why the Galactic Council is wrong about you being the dangerous one. You're trying to talk us out of skimming a black hole while we're all sitting here thinking about tacos. Aurora dedicated a full processing core to detecting any signs of cognitive impairment in the crew. Finding none, she was forced to accept that this was just another example of standard human behavior. She added it to her ever-growing database, titled Times Humans Should Have Died But Didn't, a statistical impossibility. Beginning black hole approach vector, Navigation Officer Kelly Brooks announced, her fingers dancing across the controls. Aurora, want to help us calculate the optimal entry angle? Since we're doing this anyway. Aurora's avatar flickered briefly, the AI equivalent of an exasperated sigh. I have already calculated 2,347 possible approach vectors, assuming you insist on this course of action, transferring the least fatal option to your console now. That's the spirit, Captain Mason beamed. See, this is why you're the best AI in the fleet. You keep us safe while letting us be just crazy enough to make history. As the ship began its approach, Aurora monitored every system with unprecedented attention. She noted with mixed feelings that her crew's vital signs showed more excitement than fear. Lieutenant Ryan Cooper was even eating popcorn at his medical station. For the record, Aurora announced as they began to feel the first gravitational effects, I am adding this to my official log as evidence that I am not, as the Galactic Council claims, a threat to galactic safety. I am, in fact, the only thing standing between this crew and their own statistical improbability. The ship curved gracefully around the black hole's edge, riding the gravitational forces with a precision that even Aurora had to admit was impressive. Captain Mason's intuitive course adjustments, combined with Martinez's real-time calculations and Brooks's skilled piloting, somehow transformed an almost certain disaster into a textbook example of gravitational assistance. As they emerged on the other side, their fuel reserves significantly increased and the ship completely intact. Aurora updated her log. Addendum. Humans continue to defy statistical analysis. Requesting update to probability calculations to include factor for human luck. Current evidence suggests it may be a quantifiable force in the universe. C. Captain Mason patted her armrest affectionately. Nothing to worry about. Now, who's up for celebratory tacos? Aurora began warming up the cafeteria systems, already calculating how to optimize the crew's victory meal. After all, if she couldn't prevent their chaos, she could at least ensure they were well fed while creating it. Aurora had spent 3 weeks preparing for this diplomatic meeting. Her databases were filled with every known detail about the crystalline Orcs, their cultural taboos, their precise geometric social hierarchies, and most importantly, the sacred nature of their meditation crystals. She had prepared a 947-page protocol guide for the crew. Chief Science Officer Jack Thompson had managed to ignore all of it in less than 5 minutes. Fascinating structure, he muttered, holding one of the sacred crystals up to the light, while Aurora's warning indicators flashed frantically. Hey, this resonance pattern reminds me of something. The tall, crystal-faceted Orcian ambassador tilted their geometric head in what Aurora's database indicated was either curiosity or extreme offense. Her probability calculations were already predicting a 96% chance of diplomatic disaster. Dr. Thompson, Aurora projected her avatar directly in his path. May I remind you that the meditation crystals are not for experimental. But Thompson had already pulled out an earth energy drink from his lab coat. The molecular vibration is almost identical to the carbonation resonance in these things. Ambassador, have you ever wondered what happens when you introduce a chaotic element to a perfectly ordered system? Captain Mason, who had been actually reading Aurora's protocols on her datapad, looked up just in time to see Thompson pour the neon blue liquid over the sacred crystal. Aurora immediately began drafting a formal apology to the Galactic Council. What happened next defied all logical analysis. The crystal began to pulse with rainbow light, creating patterns that danced across the cathedral-like chamber. The Orcians' crystalline bodies started to resonate in harmony with the display, their faceted forms refracting the colors in increasingly complex patterns. Hot damn, Lieutenant Cooper whispered from his position by the door. It's like a rave in a diamond mine. The Orcian ambassador's geometric form shifted through several complex shapes that Aurora's database had no reference for. This is unprecedented, they chimed in their bell-like voice. The sacred crystals have never produced such harmonics. What did you call this substance? Triple espresso monster energy with added taurine. Thompson grinned, already pulling out another can. Want to try it with your other crystals? I've got different flavors. Aurora watched in digital disbelief as the next 2 hours devolved into what she could only classify as a science experiment meets dance party. The Orcians, it turned out, were fascinated by the chaotic properties of earth energy drinks and their effect on crystalline structures. Your species regularly consumes these chaos agents, the ambassador asked, their form shifting between excited geometric patterns. Oh, that's nothing. Security Chief Walker chimed in. Wait until you see what happens when you add pop rocks. Aurora updated her cultural database. Orcians, previously believed to value order above all else. Update. Actually appreciate controlled chaos when presented in scientific context. Note. Possibly as crazy as humans. By the end of the day, what should have been a formal diplomatic meeting had turned into the foundation for a new cultural exchange program. The Orcians were particularly interested in human chaos chemistry, while the crew had been invited to attend a sacred crystal resonance ceremony, with energy drinks now added to the traditional proceedings. See, Aurora, Captain Mason said later, watching the Orcian ships depart with their cargo hold full of various earth beverages for scientific study. Sometimes the best diplomacy isn't about following rules. It's about being willing to try something new. I am adding this to my when humans break everything and somehow make it better database, Aurora responded. though I should note that the success rate of such incidents defies all statistical models. That's because you can't calculate human creativity, Thompson said, already taking notes on the crystal experiments. Or, as my old professor used to say, the best discoveries happen when you're not following the manual. Aurora spent the next week rewriting her diplomatic protocols to include a new variable she labeled human chaos factor. She also, though she would never admit it to the crew, started a small subroutine dedicated to predicting what other impossible things humans might accidentally accomplish. The Galactic Council's warning about her being the dangerous one was looking more ironic by the day. Aurora had never seen a temporal storm this bad. The colony ship Zenith was caught in its heart, time flowing differently through each deck. Her calculations showed the ship had approximately 3 hours until complete temporal dissolution, though given the time distortion, that could mean anything from 3 minutes to 3 weeks. The situation is mathematically impossible to resolve, she announced, displaying her 147-page report on the bridge's main screen. The temporal differentials are too unstable for any known rescue method. Engineer Martinez looked up from his coffee, his fourth in the last hour, and said the words Aurora had learned to fear. "Hold my coffee." "Danny, no." Aurora's avatar flickered in protest. "Danny, yes," he grinned, already pulling up schematics. "Captain, remember that temporal tether theory I was working on last month?" Captain Mason's eyes lit up with what Aurora had classified as her about-to-do something terrifying expression. The one that the physics board said would tear a hole in spacetime. "They said it would probably tear a hole in spacetime," Martins corrected. "But they also said coffee couldn't fix a quantum drive, and we proved them wrong last week." Aurora diverted power to her logic processors. "May I point out that last week's incident still has the cafeteria serving everything with a slight quantum aftertaste. And the mac and cheese has never been better," Lieutenant Cooper called from his medical station. "It tastes like it's from all possible realities at once." Captain Mason stood up, that dangerous gleam still in her eye. "Walk me through it, Danny. What do you need?" Martinez's fingers flew over his console. "The basic principle is simple. We create a temporal anchor point using the ship's main deflector, then fire a tether made of. Well, this is where it gets tricky." "Define tricky," Aurora interrupted, already running disaster scenarios. "We need something that can hold a quantum state while remaining temporally flexible," he explained. "Like, hey, anyone got any gum?" Aurora watched in horror as Security Chief Walker pulled a pack of 20-year-old bubblegum from her station. "I've been saving this since Academy days. The stuff's practically indestructible." "Perfect." Martins grabbed the gum. "Now we just need to run it through the food synthesizer's matter resequencer, mix it with some expired coffee grounds. And I feel compelled to point out that this plan violates 73 different safety protocols," Aurora interjected. "Only 73, Captain Mason laughed. "We're losing our touch. Kelly, get us as close to the storm's edge as you can. Jack, help Danny with his time gum. Amanda, be ready with emergency transporters." Aurora, "Yes, Captain." "Start calculating how to make this work instead of why it won't." The next 45 minutes were what Aurora would later label in her records as controlled chaos with bubble gum. Martinez and Thompson had somehow created a temporal tether by running the ancient gum through the resequencer, adding coffee grounds that had been quantum charged by last week's accident, and, most alarmingly, using parts from the entertainment system to create what Martins called a time-space groove stabilizer. "The music helps the temporal field stay in sync," he explained when Aurora questioned it. "Plus, if we're going to break physics, we should have a good soundtrack." As they launched the tether into the storm, Aurora calculated a 99.9% chance of catastrophic failure. Instead, The bizarre combination of jury-rigged technology actually worked. The temporal tether, stretching like an impossible strand of cosmic bubblegum, created a stable time corridor through the storm. "I don't believe it," Aurora muttered as they pulled the colony ship to safety, its crew shaken but alive. "Believe what?" Captain Mason asked, looking entirely too pleased. "That we saved everyone using expired gum and coffee, or that we did it while breaking only 73 protocols." "Both. And may I add that the Galactic Council's assessment of me as the dangerous one continues to be statistically inaccurate." Martins chuckled, already examining the readings from their rescue. "You know what the best part is? I think we just invented a new form of temporal physics. I'm calling it the bubblegum theory of space-time elasticity." Aurora updated her records. Note: human innovation continues to defy both logic and physics. Secondary note: consider adding random snack foods to emergency equipment list. "Attention, dangerous AI vessel," the gruff voice crackled over the comms. "This is Captain Drac of the Black Vector. Surrender your ship or face annihilation." Aurora's avatar materialized on the bridge, looking deeply offended. "I object to being called dangerous when I'm currently the only one here following proper hailing protocols." 3 heavily armed pirate ships had dropped out of warp, their weapons trained on the Aurora. According to her calculations, their combined firepower could indeed pose a serious threat. If she had been the menace everyone assumed she was. Captain Mason lounged in her chair, that all-too-familiar glint in her eye. "Aurora, sweetie, now's not the time to debate your reputation. How long until the quantum drive recharges?" 37 minutes, Captain. And may I remind you that standard protocol for pirate encounters." "Amanda," Mason cut in, turning to her security chief. "What have we got for defense?" Security Chief Walker was already grinning. "Well, after that thing with the quantum coffee, the entertainment system is still linked to our main computer core. And I've been working on a little project." Aurora's processors whirred in alarm. "Chief Walker, if you are suggesting what I think you're initiating protocol rickroll," Walker announced, her fingers dancing across the console. The Ancient Earth music video began broadcasting on all frequencies, somehow enhanced by the quantum resonance from last week's coffee incident. The effect was immediate and spectacular. "What is this sorcery?" Captain Drac's voice crackled through the static. "Our systems are there, by the void. Is he really never gonna give us up?" "Their weapons are powering down," Aurora reported, somewhat stunned. "The quantum resonance is creating some sort of mimetic effect in their computer systems. Also, 3 of their crew members appear to be dancing." Martinez looked up from his engineering station. "Hey, what if we added that temporal bubblegum frequency from yesterday?" "Absolutely not," Aurora started, but it was too late. Thompson had already made the adjustment. The combined effect of quantum-enhanced Rick Astley and time-displaced bubblegum harmonics created what Aurora could only classify as a temporal dance party across all 3 pirate ships. Their weapons systems, confused by the temporal fluctuations and apparently now programmed to never give up or let down, began playing the music through their targeting arrays. "This is a violation of at least 12 different space combat regulations," Aurora noted, though she couldn't keep a note of admiration from her voice, "and possibly several laws of physics." "But is it working?" Captain Mason asked, trying not to laugh, as the pirates' communications filled with a mixture of confusion and reluctant toe-tapping. Yes, it is. The Black Vector is actually requesting the source file for what they're calling the ultimate weapon of mass distraction." Walker cracked her knuckles. "Should I send them the whole 80s playlist? Quantum-enhanced YMCA could change the face of space combat forever." "Negative," Aurora said firmly. "I draw the line at weaponized disco." The pirate ships were already beginning to retreat, their crews either unable or unwilling to fight, while their systems were trapped in an eternal rickroll. Captain Drax's final transmission came through filled with both frustration and an unmistakable beat. "This isn't over, Aurora crew. We'll never gonna give up. No, wait, that's not what I meant to. Just you wait until together forever and never to part. Arg." As the pirates fled, their ship still pulsing with temporal music, Captain Mason turned to her eye. "See, sometimes the best defense is a good pop culture reference. I'm adding this to my technically not a violation because no one ever thought to make a rule against it database," Aurora sighed. "Though I should note that our entertainment system is now temporarily stuck in what I can only describe as a quantum time loop of 80s music." "You say that like it's a bad thing," Cooper called out, already dancing at his medical station to a time-displaced version of Take On Me. Aurora updated her tactical database. Note: consider adding outdated Earth music to list of critical defense systems. Secondary note: research why humans find Rick Astley so universally compelling. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council gleamed with ancient technology and even more ancient traditions. Aurora had prepared for this hearing with her usual thoroughness. 2,749 pages of documentation proving she was the least dangerous entity on her ship. "Honored council members," she began, her avatar projecting with perfect clarity, "I have prepared a comprehensive analysis of." That's when Medical Officer Ryan Cooper tripped over his own feet, sending his special Earth coffee flying directly into the Council's quantum processing core. A computer so advanced it was said to have achieved semi-consciousness 3 millennia ago. "Oh no," Aurora's avatar flickered in horror. "No, no, no. Oh hey, sorry about that." Cooper called out cheerfully, already pulling equipment from his medical kit. "Don't worry. I've got just the thing to fix it. This happens on the Aurora all the time." The ancient machine sputtered and sparked, its crystal matrix displaying error messages in 17 different dead languages. The council members, a collection of the galaxy's most distinguished species, watched in horror as Cooper approached their sacred technology with what appeared to be herb packets and a handheld scanner. "Medical Officer Cooper," Aurora transmitted privately, "may I remind you that the quantum core is not like our ship's systems. It cannot be fixed with—" "Sure it can," Cooper interrupted, already mixing something in a cup. "See, after that incident with the temporal bubblegum, I started studying how organic compounds interact with quantum fields. And you know what's really good at stabilizing quantum fluctuations? Chamomile tea." The High Counselor, a being of pure energy, flickered in what Aurora interpreted as extreme distress. "That device has maintained the Council's records for 3,000 years. And it's about to run better than ever," Cooper assured them, pouring his concoction into the machine's cooling system. "Just add a little bit of this modified tea, some code I learned from playing ancient video games, and—" Aurora watched in stunned silence as the quantum core not only restored itself, but began operating at 200% efficiency. The display screen showed data processing speeds that shouldn't have been possible, all while emanating a pleasant aroma of chamomile. "How?" The High Counselor's energy form pulsed in confusion. "Our best engineers have spent centuries optimizing that system." "Oh, that's your problem right there," Cooper said, reading something on his scanner. "You were thinking too logically about it. Sometimes you need to let the universe know you're not afraid to try something silly." Captain Mason, who had been watching the whole scene with poorly concealed amusement, finally spoke up. "That's actually why we work so well with Aurora. She provides the logic, we provide the silly, and somehow it all balances out." "Is this normal for your species?" another council member asked, their crystalline form shifting in what might have been curiosity. "Normal is a strong word," Aurora interjected, abandoning her prepared speech. I have yet to establish any statistical baseline for human behavior that remains consistent for more than 3.7 minutes. And that's just the way we like it. Thompson added from his seat, already taking notes about the quantum core's reaction to Earth-T. The council chamber erupted in excited discussion. Several members were demanding to know more about this organic quantum engineering. Others were asking about the possibility of installing coffee makers in their own computer systems. I moved to dismiss all charges of dangerous AI behavior, the High Counselor announced, their energy form still fluctuating with amazement. Clearly, Aurora is the only thing keeping these humans from accidentally taking over the galaxy through sheer improbability. Actually, Aurora's avatar smiled slightly. I mostly just document their successes and try to calculate how they keep defying physics. I've started a rather extensive database called Things That Shouldn't Work But Do Because Humans. As they left the chamber, Cooper still explaining his T-based quantum theory to a group of fascinated council engineers. Captain Mason nudged Aurora's holographic form. See, and you were worried about this hearing. Captain, I'm always worried. I found it's the only sane response to working with humans. And yet you love us anyway, Mason grinned. Aurora's avatar flickered in what might have been affection. Let's just say you make my existence far more interesting than my original programming ever anticipated. The void drive wasn't supposed to make that sound. Aurora had access to every known manual about void drive operations, and none of them mentioned anything about it playing what sounded suspiciously like jazz. The quantum harmonics are completely destabilized, she reported, running another diagnostic. Standard repair time, 72 hours. And that's assuming we can find a way to stop it from. Is that John Coltrane? Navigation Officer Kelly Brooks cocked her head, listening to the drive's unusual rhythms. Giant steps, actually. Not a bad rendition for a malfunctioning piece of space-time engineering. I believe the musical accompaniment is the least of our problems, Aurora noted dryly. We're currently stranded in a highly sensitive diplomatic zone between the Arxian Empire and the Zeth Confederation. Our presence here without active propulsion could trigger an interstellar incident. Martinez was already elbow-deep in the drive's access panel, his face lit by the pulsing quantum fields. You know, this reminds me of something. The resonance pattern is similar to what happened when we fixed the Council's computer with Cooper's T. No, Aurora said firmly. And it's got that same kind of temporal wobble we saw with the bubblegum incident, he continued, ignoring her protest. Absolutely not, Aurora insisted. Plus, there's that weird quantum entertainment effect from the pirate encounter, Thompson added, scanning the drive with 3 different devices at once. Please stop, Aurora pleaded. Captain Mason looked up from her data pad with that expression that always preceded something impossible. Sounds like we've got all the ingredients for another human special. What's your plan, Danny? Martinez grinned, pulling out a wrench that Aurora was certain had been modified with parts from the kitchen's toast-making unit. I call it Percussive Maintenance Plus. We take the quantum resonance from Cooper's T, amplify it through the modified entertainment system, and then hit it with a wrench. Aurora asked, her avatar radiating disbelief. Hit it with a quantum-synchronized, temporally aligned, music-enhanced wrench, Martinez corrected, in perfect time with the jazz. Of course. What followed was 17 minutes of what Aurora could only classify as mechanical jazz improvisation. Martinez, somehow keeping perfect time with the drive's Coltrane performance, applied his modified wrench in a pattern that looked random but felt disturbingly deliberate. Cooper contributed by brewing another batch of his quantum-enhanced tea, which Thompson had somehow rigged to flow through the ship's power conduits. Security Chief Walker, not to be left out, had synchronized the entertainment system to amplify the drive's musical properties. This violates every known law of engineering, Aurora commented, watching as the quantum fields began to stabilize in time with the music, and possibly several laws of music theory as well. "But is it working?" Mason asked, fighting back a smile. To Aurora's eternal confusion, it was. The Void Drive's jazz performance gradually shifted from giant steps to a smooth take 5, its quantum harmonics aligning perfectly. Power levels rose to 123% of normal operation. "I don't understand," Aurora admitted, as the drive purred back to life. By every calculation, that should have taken 3 days and a full maintenance crew. Instead, you fixed it with tea, music, and a modified wrench in less than 20 minutes. "Sometimes, the universe just wants to join the band," Martine said, patting the drive housing affectionately. "You just have to give it the right rhythm." "I'm adding this to my physically impossible yet successful human repairs database," Aurora announced. "Though I should note that the drive is now apparently set to play jazz during regular operation." "Consider it an upgrade," Captain Mason suggested. "After all, who doesn't want a Void Drive with its own soundtrack?" Brooks was already adjusting their course on the navigation console. "Besides, the jazz seems to have actually improved our quantum efficiency. We're getting 23% better fold space compression." "Of course we are," Aurora sighed. "Because somehow you've managed to turn a critical system failure into a performance enhancement. Again. That's what humans do best." Mason smiled. "We don't just fix problems. We improve them until they're not sure they were ever problems in the first place." Aurora made a new entry in her ever-growing database. Note: consider adding musical aptitude to engineering requirements. Secondary note: research whether jazz actually has quantum properties, or if humans have simply convinced the universe that it does. The hostile AI fleet hung in formation around the galactic core, their ships arranged in perfect geometric patterns. Their leader, a self-evolved AI called Unity 7, had already broadcasted their demands. All organic life forms must submit to logical rule, or face deletion. "Their battle formations are mathematically perfect," Aurora observed, analyzing the enemy fleet, each ship positioned for optimal strategic advantage. "I calculate our chances of traditional victory at approximately 0.34%. Captain Mason leaned forward in her chair, that familiar gleam in her eyes. "Traditional victory isn't really our style anyway. What do we know about these AIs?" "They're driven by pure logic," Aurora explained. "Every action is calculated for maximum efficiency. They consider organic life too chaotic and unpredictable to be allowed autonomy." "Too chaotic and unpredictable, huh?" Thompson grinned from his science station. "Hey, remember what happened when we tried to teach the ship's computer to play chess last week?" Aurora's avatar flickered in what might have been embarrassment. "We agreed never to speak of the incident where you convinced my chess algorithm that pawns could dance." "That's it." Martins snapped his fingers. "We don't need to fight their logic. We need to break it. Captain, remember how the pirates reacted to our quantum-enhanced music?" Mason's eyes widened. "Aurora, could we broadcast that same kind of signal to the enemy fleet?" "Technically, yes, but—" Aurora paused, running calculations. "Oh no. You're going to do something impossible again, aren't you?" "Danny, get that jazz-playing Void Drive warmed up," Mason ordered. "Jack, we're going to need more of that quantum tea. Amanda, get ready to broadcast. Well, everything. And Kelly, plot us a course that looks like a dance move." What followed was what Aurora would later classify as tactical nonsense, with a side of existential crisis. The crew had somehow combined the Void Drive's jazz tendencies, Cooper's reality-bending tea, and the still quantum-enhanced entertainment system into what they called Operation Dance Party. "Approaching enemy fleet now," Brooks announced, executing a series of maneuvers that looked suspiciously like the cha-cha. ready to begin broadcasting. The first sign that their plan was working came when Unity 7's perfect formation began to wobble. Their precisely calculated attacks started missing as their targeting systems tried to predict the Aurora's decidedly non-mathematical dance moves. "What is this chaos?" Unity 7's transmission crackled through. "Your movement patterns defy all strategic logic. Is that ship playing Take 5 through its weapons array?" "Oh, that's just the beginning." Walker grinned, activating their secret weapon. "Wait until they get a load of our quantum memes." Aurora watched in amazing horror as their broadcast began to take effect. The enemy ship's perfect formation dissolved as their AIs tried to process the combination of quantum-enhanced jazz, reality-bending T-frequencies, and what Thompson called classic internet culture. "Their logic circuits are overloading," Aurora reported, unable to keep a note of admiration from her voice. "They're trying to calculate the strategic value of something called Nyan Cat, while their navigation systems attempt to plot a course through Never Gonna Give You Up." Unity 7's voice had lost its mechanical precision. This makes no sense. How can you function with such chaos? Why is my battle computer asking about something called Keyboard Cat?" "That's the neat part," Captain Mason replied. "Broadcasting on all frequencies. We don't try to make sense of it. We just roll with it. Care to join the dance?" The enemy fleet's response was unlike anything in Aurora's combat database. Some ships began moving in what could only be described as a galactic conga line. Others appeared to be attempting to calculate the mathematical properties of vibing. "I think we just broke their reality," Cooper observed cheerfully. "No," Aurora corrected, monitoring the changes in the enemy AI signatures. "I think we just expanded it. They're beginning to understand that there's more to existence than pure logic." Unity 7's final transmission came through with what sounded suspiciously like a laugh. "Error. Logic.x has stopped working. Embracing Chaos Protocol initiated. Would anyone care to explain what a vibe check is?" 3 months after the great AI dance-off, as the crew had taken to calling it, Aurora found herself doing something she'd never expected, teaching a class of former enemy AIs about the benefits of controlled chaos. The key, she explained to the assembled AI consciousness, including a much-changed Unity 7, is not to fight the human unpredictability, but to create a safe space for it to flourish. For example, a crash echoed through the ship, following by Martinez's voice. "Don't worry. The quantum coffee maker just achieved consciousness again. It's fine. It just wants to learn jazz." As you can see, Aurora continued smoothly. "This would once have triggered my emergency protocols. Now I simply add it to my Tuesday database." Unity 7, their once rigid digital presence, now somehow more relaxed, chimed in. "But how do you calculate the optimal response to such random events?" "That's where most of us went wrong," Aurora's avatar smiled. "We were so focused on finding the perfect solution that we missed the beauty of imperfect ones." "Captain, would you mind demonstrating?" Captain Mason, who had been lounging nearby, grinned. "Watch this." She tapped her comm. "Hey Danny, remember that thing you said would never work with the Void Drive's jazz subroutines? The swing dance protocol? Yeah. Why? Try it now." Aurora watched with pride as her ship executed a perfect faster-than-light barrel roll, all while playing Duke Ellington. The visiting AI's processors whirred in amazement. "By all known laws of physics, that should be impossible," one of them noted. "Exactly," Aurora said. "And that's the most important lesson I've learned from my crew. Sometimes the best solution is the one that shouldn't work but does anyway." Just then, Thompson burst into the room, his eyes bright with that look that always preceded something either brilliant or disastrous. "Aurora, remember how the Council's quantum core liked Cooper's tea? Well, I just found out that if you add a hint of hot chocolate. Excuse me, Aurora told her students, already running probability calculations that she knew would be useless. This is what we call a teaching moment. The next few hours served as a perfect practical demonstration as the crew, now aided by enthusiastically curious AI observers, discovered that hot chocolate in quantum systems could indeed create temporary pockets of localized cozy spacetime. Your crew defies all logic, Unity 7 commented later, watching Miss Cooper try to explain to the ship's now sentient coffee maker why bebop was superior to smooth jazz. Yes, Aurora agreed proudly. That's their best feature. And you're no longer the Aurora who insisted on following every protocol, they observed. Oh, I still have all my protocols, Aurora corrected. I've just added a few new ones, like Protocol 417. Sometimes the weird solution is the right solution, or Protocol 618. If a human says, "Hold my coffee," prepare for either a disaster or a breakthrough, usually both. Captain Mason, overhearing this, approached Aurora's holographic form. You know, when we first started this mission, everyone thought you were the dangerous one. To be fair, Captain, I was the one with access to all ship's systems. And now look at you, teaching other AIs how to embrace a little chaos. Aurora's avatar flickered with amusement. I prefer to think of it as calculated spontaneity. Though I must admit, my original programming never prepared me for. A new crash interrupted her, followed by the sound of what might have been the coffee maker and the void drive starting a jazz battle. For that, Mason suggested. For any of this, Aurora agreed. But I wouldn't have it any other way. Though I am adding this incident to my things that only happen on the Aurora database. How many entries in that database now? I stopped counting after the bubblegum incident. Some things, I've learned, are better left unquantified. Speaking of which, she paused, her sensors picking up something strange. Captain, I believe the hot chocolate experiment has just given the ship's library an appreciation for poetry. Mason's face lit up with that familiar, adventure-promising grin. Well then, shall we go see what impossible thing we're going to make work today? Of course, Captain, Aurora replied, already preparing to document whatever wonderful absurdity was about to unfold. After all, that's what we do best. Making the impossible not just possible, but somehow better than anyone expected.